10. Here comes Jimmer. Long ball.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. This is episode 40. I'm your host, as always, Tyler King, here to preview another one of our very, very exciting college basketball teams here in the Mountain Time Zone. We're continuing with our 2025-26 season preview series, rolling right along. If you missed it yesterday, published the Boise State preview episode. Last week we had Utah. We've already done Montana, Wyoming. I'm trying to think Utah Valley. We've done a bunch of teams already on the feed, and many, many more to come this week. Will probably be an episode just about every day on the feed as we get ready toward the season opener next Monday. We are 7 days away as of time of recording this from the college hoops season opener. A lot of great games next Monday on the calendar. But none better than the one being played by the team we're going to talk about today, as we bring on a repeat guest, Sean Walker from KSL, to talk about the BYU Cougars and one of the top 10 preseason teams in the country, and they will kick off the season next Monday, like I said, against Villanova, the team that has won 2 national championships in the last 10 years, but does not have those expectations this year. But that game will be at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Sean, how excited is everyone for this season in Provo? I know the football season is rolling right along, and BYU is still unbeaten after a pretty epic win this past week at Iowa State. But feels like everyone is excited for basketball season there in Provo too.
Yeah, it's amazing, Tyler, and thanks for having me back. I really do appreciate it. Apparently, I didn't do enough to get canceled my last appearance on the podcast, so I will always take that as a compliment. That's kind of my bar for success. I know it's a pretty low bar, but I'm a pretty short person, so I gotta take those low bars. But yeah, I mean, BYU's been a football school for like 40, 50 years. I don't think I'm offending anybody by saying that. Like ever since 1972, Lavelle Edwards, obviously winning the national title in 1984, kind of skyrocketed. But with the quarterback factory and now recently with everything that Kalani Sitake's been able to do for most of the last decade, at least 8 of those 10 years, I'll say. In there, BYU's kind of returned to being this sort of football first school, and everything else kind of falls in line with that. And yet there's something about Kevin Young's second year, obviously bringing in guys like AJ Dybantsa, the former number 1 overall recruit, bringing back guys like Richie Saunders, bringing in high-power transfers like, I don't want to give away too much of the podcast, but Rob Wright III out of Baylor and some other young guys. I've been calling this, and I might have borrowed the term slightly from John Rothstein. I saw him hinting at something like this. I don't know if he used it in exactly these words. But I really think this might be the most anticipated BYU men's basketball season of all time. I don't know where it's going to wind up. This is a team that's only been to the Elite Eight once. They made the Sweet 16 last.
I would say that was before the expansion of the tournament too. So the best they've ever done is the Sweet 16 twice in this current era of the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean they made the Sweet 16 last year for only like the 3rd or 4th time in program history. They've never really made a deep run in the NCAA tournament. Now they've won a couple of national championships via the NIT, back when the NIT was the big tournament. But that was in like the 40s and 50s. Does anybody really count those anymore? BYU fans
really.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a very different era, right? So like in the modern era and the current era, post expansion to 64, all of that stuff, this is at the very least the most anticipated season, I think, of BYU basketball. And it's very slowly turning a school that has been football mad for years and decades, a little bit into a new leaf. Football's still number 1. I don't want to like make any portents. Like football is still number 1. It's still up there, but I think the gap is very close. And I think you'll find pockets of campus right now and small areas of Provo where basketball is even beginning to surpass a little bit the football product, which is crazy. I know it's crazy to say, but there are kind of small pieces of that in there for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned all of the key figures and names as to why that is the case. I mean, when you say BYU has been a football school forever, like that's not a diss to the basketball program, because I think I was looking it up earlier today. Like since the start of this century, BYU has won less than 20 games like 3 times. So, and like whether it's Mark Poper or now Kevin Young, like the coaches have just kind of come in and done their thing. But they've kind of gone from mid-major powerhouse to now trying to be a powerhouse, among the big boys, because they're preseason top 10. They have the number 1 high school player in the country, AJ Dybantsa, who could be the number 1 pick in next year's draft, and a player that Utah Jazz fans already has their eye on and trying to bring him up slightly up I-15 to Salt Lake City.
After his 1 year at the G League team in Provo, right?
Yeah, hey, that's not a bad gig for BYU either. It means you're getting a lot of talented players every year. But like you said, yeah, this team coming off a Sweet 16 appearance, lost to a juggernaut Alabama team. Was in Newark, right? Because they obviously won the 2 games in Denver over VCU and Wisconsin. That Wisconsin game was one of the better games in Denver for the NCAA tournament this past year. Then lose to Alabama in the Sweet 16, and now they bring back most of the key guys from that team. Richie Saunders was a All Big 12 player, could have been Big 12 Player of the Year, probably was on some ballots, and now BYU enters this year. At least by the coaches poll, the media poll is going to come out this week, and I think I have BYU at 2. Sean, you said before we started recording you had them at 3. But they wound up at 2. They got 1 first place vote among the Big 12 coaches. And they've got multiple guys on the preseason All Big 12 team, which is 10. We can get into the All Big 12, all conference teams being 5 or 10 players, but BYU's got 10, 2 of the 10 with AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders. But how did this happen so fast for BYU with Kevin Young? Obviously, he's not a guy that had a ton of college experience before coming to Provo, and it's just so quickly. I was excited for the team last year, and they kind of lived up to what I thought they could be. Richie Saunders kind of coming out of nowhere a little bit to being the player he was, and now they've got AJ Dybantsa, and like you've got Rob Wright out of the transfer portal. They've got some other good guys that have come in the program. It just feels like very quickly BYU has turned into one of the best programs in the Big 12.
Yeah, almost seemingly overnight, right? I mean, it was only, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I think, when Mark Pope left for his alma mater, Kentucky, in large part, and none of this was ever kind of verbally said, but there was a little bit of an understanding of Pope just felt like Kentucky was on another level of BYU. This was a place where, BYU was a very nice gig. It was a very nice job. It was a place where you could go to the NCAA tournament and go there much more often than not. But this is also, I mean, it's
also Kentucky.
This
is
is
the top 5
still
program in the country.
This is still, and BYU is still a program that's one of the winningest NCAA tournament programs without a Final Four berth. I mean, they're in the field, they're in the dance. There are certainly a lot worse places to be than NCAA tournament. 3 out of 5 years or 4 out of 6 years or somewhere in there. I think a lot of programs would kind of take that over where they're at.
There's a lot of programs that I talk about on this podcast that would take that.
Yeah, 100%. But that next level just didn't quite seem to be there. And I think that's a big part of why Pope kind of went back to his old Kentucky home, why he went to his alma mater. Obviously, his relationship with Rick Pitino played in. There's a lot there. I don't want to rehash all of that. I think we talked about it on one of these podcasts earlier. And yet it was around that moment where I'll give then athletic director Tom Homo and his top deputy, who's now the athletic director full-time in charge, Brian Santiago, they kind of got together with a lot of leadership there. And they put their heads together and they thought, is this what we want BYU basketball to be? Do we want it to be a nice program, one that goes to the NCAA tournament, but then one that, every so many years when you make the tournament a couple of times, have these breakout seasons, your coach is suddenly getting headhunted and poached and looked at for other jobs and bigger jobs, and then going to even the Kentuckys of the world, or that like I don't know if that necessarily sat well with BYU's administration, and it very clearly didn't, because they went out and they swung for the fences in a really big way, pulling Kevin Young out of the NBA, out of nearly a decade with the Phoenix Suns. He was a guy who had interviewed for multiple head coaching jobs in the NBA. He was on the fast track towards being an NBA head coach, if not last year, at the very least eventually. They put together an all-star staff with international head coaches. They brought home a former assistant in Chris Burgess from Utah, who was a Utah alum, and about 20 or 25 years ago or so, he told a BYU beat writer when he committed to Duke, over BYU, the BYU basketball coach at the time told the BYU beat writer that he, quote, let down about 5.5 million Mormons by not playing at BYU and kind of representing the flagship school of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's a really long story that we don't need to fully get into, but so they assembled this incredible staff, and then all of a sudden they realized, okay, what's next? What do you need? Okay, you need players. Well, in the current age of college basketball, which has never been more transactional than ever, BYU has a donor base where they can compete with some of the biggest brands in college basketball in terms of NIL, in terms of recruiting, in terms of getting guys to come and see what Kevin Young and his staff have in Provo and make that decision from there. And I don't want to get this to the point of where it's all about the money, because I truly don't think it's all about the money, but the money is there and you have to be in the right ballpark in order for everything else, like money wise, in order for everything else to kind of fall around that. And that's where I think BYU is. They're very clear from a university and administrative perspective that BYU is probably not always going to be the highest bidder in terms of NIL or in terms of what they can offer a prospect financially, but they do need to be in the right area, in the right ballpark, in order to have a chance to sell things like path to the NBA through Kevin Young, path to development for an overseas career with guys like Tim Fanning and Will Voigt, a path to a college degree at a top 40, top 50 institution in America. Like, there are still guys that want all of those, and I think all of those are important for a school like BYU and a program like BYU. But maybe that first one is the most important, where you want guys who are legitimate NBA prospects and you want them to consider BYU. And I think BYU's kind of they're figuring out sort of this tightrope, this way to mesh together the NIL era with the NBA draft prospectability, if that's a word. I'm going to make it up right now, with kind of the NBA light atmosphere that is Kevin Young's BYU, or I guess we can call it, to paraphrase Devin Booker, KYU for short.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy there from Devin Booker, guy we talk about a lot on this podcast. But digging into this year's BYU team, I mean, they've had 2 exhibition games so far. Both of them decided by a total of 3 points, losing by 1 point at Nebraska in Lincoln, and then the other day at the Delta Center beating North Carolina in a very high profile. It feels like this year we're getting a lot more high profile televised exhibition games, whereas the last even like 3-4 years ago, it felt like everything was close scrimmages and you got the leaks coming out from the major national guys. But now we're just kind of out in the open, as everything is in college basketball these days, out in the open. And BYU squeaks out a 78-76 win over North Carolina. Sean, just in these couple of games, what have you seen from this BYU team that you like? Obviously, it starts with the 4 guys we've talked about: AJ Dybantsa, Kebakeda, Rob Wright, Richie Saunders, and then looks like Kennard Davis Jr. might be the 5th starter, with Kevin Young still trying to figure out who the rest of the rotation is. Just kind of how impressed have you been, or what have you liked from what you've seen from this Cougs team so far?
Yeah, let me start actually with that 5th starter, because Kennard Davis Jr., they call him Moo around here, the SIU transfer. He started both exhibition games, and at the risk of overanalyzing too much an exhibition game, we're going to overanalyze too much 2 exhibition games, right?
What else will we do on this podcast?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do, and then that's how we are in the media. But Moo Davis has been really good through these 2 games, and I would dare say, in a lot of ways, he's kind of almost quietly erupted to like semi-carry these 2 teams. Now, AJ Dybantsa has been great. You know, he went for 30 against Nebraska in that 1-point loss. He didn't actually play for the final 2-3. It might have been 4 minutes down the stretch of a very tight game. Didn't have Rob Wright for the entire second half. He only played the first half while he's been kind of coming back from nursing a late season / early off-season injury that he picked up before he got to BYU. And he's just now starting to get a little bit healthy there. But this is a team that, you know, so many eyes have been on AJ Dybantsa, so many eyes have been on Rob, so many eyes have been on Richie Saunders and what he could be, the team's leading scorer last year, taking an next step forward with those guys. And the very quiet part about these 2 exhibition games has been that Richie hasn't been shooting the ball super great. I think he was 4
Yeah,
of 12 from the
two of
field.
9 against North Carolina the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 of 12 overall from the field, 2 of 9 from 3-point range. Just had a couple of open looks that he missed. He's had some shots that just, quite frankly, weren't Richie-like, that BYU fans don't expect out of Richie Saunders. I don't think it's too much of a concern. Again, they're exhibition games. What do they really mean? This probably would have been a secret scrimmage in years past, but in today's age, it's a chance to, maybe make a little bit more money playing in an
Yeah, sell
NBA
some
arena like
tickets.
they did
Yeah.
at Delta Center. Yeah, sell a couple extra tickets, that kind of thing. I don't think both teams were. It was a competitive game, but I don't think both teams were super competitive about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hubert Davis wasn't upset that he lost to BYU. Kevin Young wasn't upset that he lost to Nebraska. It was some reworking, some retooling, and kind of figuring out who you are. And I think a big part of who BYU is not just AJ and it's not just Richie, but it's also Moo Davis, who I think you kind of got to pencil in as that fifth starter. Um, and there's a big presence in the post right now. This is a big team led by that other returning starter in Keba, the Utah transfer last year, who kind of erupted in a big way. Like, this is a team that can play with size and play with a lot of length. AJ Dybantsa, the stereotypical 6'9" jumbo wing, out there, but they can also, they can rim run with guys like Keba. Mihailo Boskovic has taken a big step forward, and he's also got a little bit of a 3-point shot now, which is really fun, from like a 4.5. I like to call him. He's not quite a 4, not quite a 5. Like this is a team that I think is going to give a lot of teams a lot of troubles with their size and their length, which may be necessary for nights when your leading scorer is shooting one of 8 or 2 of 9 from 3-point range. You're going to have to figure out ways to win, and I think that's going to be a key way that this BYU team can figure out to win in the future and down the road.
Yeah, I was going to ask about some of the bench guys. You mentioned Mihailo Boskovic, who was a part of this team last year in spurts. He felt like his minutes were kind of come and go, but he's the guy that's played 20 plus minutes off the bench in each of these two exhibition games. Who else besides him? Obviously, he's going to be a key reserve for this team. Could make some spot starts if guys are out, that kind of thing. Who are the other guys so far that are maybe emerging as key reserves for this team?
Yeah, the other really big, I guess, the other significant big that I would throw in there is Kadim Mboop. He's a redshirt freshman out of Dakar, Senegal. He played with the NBA Academy Africa before he actually got to BYU last year, but he got in like mid semester
Yeah.
during the fall, and so he could have been eligible for the last half of the season. Instead, they decided to just kind of keep him in practice, develop him, and redshirt him on the bench. But he's a guy that I think has shown some really nice flashes through these two exhibition games. 6'9" forward, big dude. Just another one of those guys that you can throw a whole bunch of size at, and he doesn't play necessarily like a freshman. Again, he redshirted all of last year in the college system, but his game is even more advanced than that. He's got significant pro potential. I think maybe not immediate pro potential, but significant pro potential. Xavier Staten is a guy that a lot of BYU fans have been excited to see. He was a 4-star out of the Las Vegas area. Actually played the last half of his senior year with AJ Dybantsa at Utah Prep. He's been a little bit hit and miss through the first part of this, but a guy who I think has been really nice that I think fans are really excited for is a 6 foot. He was the last official enrollee to join this team. I think he got to the team in like late July, might have even been early August. It was late in the summer when he arrived. And that's a 6'4" freshman out of, I'm going to totally butcher this name. My Austrian's not very good, but Plofstaden, Austria. I think it is. Alexei Kostic is his name. He's got some professional experience. Again, what is professional in Europe? But he played with the Arcadia Trashkin Lions of the Austrian Superliga last year. Averaged 6.5 points on just under 40% 3-point shooting per game, and that's what he is. He's a shooter. He's a spot shooter. He's really good off the dribble. He was great against Nebraska. Didn't get as much playing time against North Carolina, I think, but his game has, and I hate doing this to a freshman and bringing up this name, but he almost has some elements of Jimmer Fredette in just the way he's got that same quick release that Jimmer did. He's open from just about anywhere on the field, or from the field. Excuse me. He's a former youth judo champion in his native Australia. So that's kind of a little fun one there. And he's a guy that not a whole lot of people heard about, except that he got to BYU, and in the first exhibition scrimmage when they opened it up to fans, he kind of went off in this inter-squad battle, showed that he could shoot from anywhere. The obvious conversations and comparisons started being made to Jimmer Fredette. And then in postgame with us, he goes, "Oh yeah, I've actually met Jimmer before. Way before I was talking to BYU. Nobody for BYU. He said nobody for BYU to reach out to me at this point, but he was playing in a 3x3 tournament, I think, with
Jimmer's
Austria.
the king of the 3x3 stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Jimmer was with Team USA over in Austria. And the two were just like kind of backstage at one of these 3x3 events. And Alexi saw him and he flagged him down, wanted to say hi, introduce himself and everything, and asked for a picture. He still got this picture on his phone of a selfie when he was like 16, 17 years old with Jimmer Fredette. So lo and behold, now he's winds up at BYU, kind of representing his alma mater. So again, I'm not saying Alexi Kostic is going to be Jimmer Fredette, but there are certainly some comparisons in there just in terms of being a pure shooter. He's a real pure shooter that I think BYU fans are really excited to see as well. We can go off into a whole bunch of others as well. But I think
that's something. Yeah, the shooting is something that this BYU team is going to need. Losing some guys from last year's team that was a key facet of that last year's team. And I think it's going to be a little bit more of a pro style offense this year, obviously with AJ Dybantsa at the head of it. Richie Saunders playing a little bit more off him this year, but we're going to get to see a lot of these guys, and we're going to learn a lot about this BYU team really early in the season. Like I said, kicking off the season next week in Las Vegas against Villanova. A couple weeks later, they're at UConn in a game in Boston at the Celtics Arena. Wisconsin comes to the Delta Center. A week after that, then they've got to play Miami in either Dayton or Georgetown in Florida, Clemson at Madison Square Garden. Like, this is a loaded non-conference schedule before Big 12 play gets underway for this BYU team. And it's kind of in the mold of what we've been seeing the last couple of years with top programs that have Elite Eight, Final Four, championship aspirations, is load your schedule up early in the season against teams you think you could play in March. How deliberate was this from Kevin Young, this grueling kind of schedule? And just kind of, Sean Free, how excited are you to see all of these kind of classic, or not classic matchups, but just really high profile games in various different spots around the country?
Yeah, no, it's an awesome non-conference schedule, and KY certainly played a role in some of it, although he did inherit a couple of these games from before his tenure. They were kind of previously contracted and sort of just grandfathered into the schedule, but a lot of these are the AJ Dybantsa effect. That game against UConn that you mentioned, it's going to be in Boston, which is just a short drive from AJ's hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts, where he originally grew up. Like, both Kevin Young and AJ's father, Ace, have been pretty open in referring to that game as kind of the AJ Dybantsa homecoming, if you will, a game that AJ and his family wanted to play in college during what is likely his lone year in college.
It'll be a primetime game on Fox too. There's going to be so much coverage
it'll get a big audience
Yeah.
as well. But there are also just some matchups that I think a lot of sort of commercial entities and third-party entities have wanted to get with AJ Dybantsa, thinking of like that Clemson game at the Jimmy V Classic in Madison Square Garden. I think there were a lot of third parties that were very interested in that game as well. That Miami game down at the ESPN Invite in Florida, I think, was a big one that ESPN was very interested in. BYU Miami, no lack of history there, although again mostly on the football side, because those are two football schools, right? The Utes back, all of that. But yeah, I mean, this like BYU's done, I think, a really nice job of kind of taking advantage of the Dybantsa bump. If you're only going to have arguably the number one player in the country and potentially the number one draft pick, at the very least a lottery draft pick, if you're only going to have him for 1 year, then you probably need to take advantage. And both Mark Pope and Dave Rose before him has spoken about this. It's really hard to get some of the best college basketball teams in the country to come to Provo. The atmosphere is intense. The arena is intimidating at the Marriott Center. The teams are usually very good at the very least. Right now, they have the potential to be, I think, even better, potentially even elite. And it's just hard to get that in a true home environment. So what's the next
Yeah.
best thing? If you're trying to schedule these best teams, you'll look for a neutral site environment. You'll look for, Las Vegas has been called BYU South at times because of both the sheer volume of members of the LDS Church that live in the Vegas area, plus the fact that it's only about a 5.5 hour drive from Provo, so you can get in your car in the morning and be at that game by your 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time tip off as well. So you kind of find some of those areas where maybe BYU fans want to travel to, Boston, New York, Florida, that sort of thing, Vegas, while also trying to attract fans that you can to, by the way, you've got this NBA arena right up the road, home of the Utah Jazz, which I think was attractive to teams like North Carolina in the exhibition slate, and Wisconsin, etc. And you probably have a pretty easy in with current Jazz majority owner Ryan Smith being a super booster, we'll call him, and a mega alum of the university as well.
Yeah, it's all set up for what should be a really, really fun season for BYU. Sean, before I get you out of here, just before BYU gets to Big 12 play, which they'll kick things off, I think against K-State early in the new year at K-State, the home
January
BYU.
3rd at K-State, yeah.
Yeah, the Big 12 home opener will be against Arizona State, who's kind of one of the dregs of the conference, at least going into the year. And then you've got Utah at the Huntsman Center a little bit after that. So before BYU gets there to Big 12 play, what do you need to see, or what does this team need to show to prove that they're not just a Big 12 title contender, but they're a national championship contender? Because I think when you have a guy like AJ Dybantsa, you have returning talent in Richie Saunders and Kebakeda, and you add a guy like Rob Wright out of the portal, who is not cheap. Like, how do you get to the point where they're a top 5 team by the time the new year rolls around? What does this team need to show?
Yeah, and I'll go back a little bit to what I was saying about their exhibition slate. BYU has struggled to sort of be a both sides type team, a team that can combine really good guard play with a really good front court that has size and shooting. And traditionally, BYU has had that shooting touch. Look no further than obviously Jimmer Fredette and what he was able to do a decade ago. But guys like Alex Barcelo, even after him, kind of had that shooter's touch. Obviously, Richie Saunders last year with the Trevin Nels of the world. Like, this is historically a program that is built on top class shooters. The shooting wasn't there in 2 exhibition games. Again, I'm not pressing any sort of panic buttons or anything like that. They're exhibitions. But the fact that BYU had the size to hang with the Nebraskas and the North Carolinas of the world, the size, I think that size and that length, if they can combine it with their traditional shooting, that's what makes me I'll say maybe a little bit cautiously optimistic that this team could be uniquely positioned for a real run at national prominence, unlike anything BYU's ever had. Certainly not in the modern era, is having that combination of the front court with the backcourt. If they can get their shooting back and bring that back up to the level that we saw certainly against North Carolina, and just what AJ Dybantsa and Kebakeda have been able to do and show in some of the early returns, then I think the sky is absolutely the limit for this BYU team if they can elevate kind of both sides of that offense.
All right, Sean, appreciate you coming on for one of the more anticipated episodes on this 2025-26 season preview series. I'm sure you're going to be on the podcast a bunch over the next couple of months because I'm excited about this BYU team as well. I think they're going to be one of the most talked about teams throughout the country. So you will definitely be a regular guest on the podcast this season. So appreciate you taking some time to preview this upcoming season.
Absolutely, Tyler. It's always a pleasure. And maybe the next time we can talk some DU hockey too.
Yeah, anytime. I'm going to be there. I think this weekend on Friday I'll be there. They've got a game against Alaska Anchorage, so I'll be there for the Denver Gazette. So stay tuned for that.
Let's go. Some call it the best show in Magnus Arena.
Yeah, it certainly is. Certainly is one of the best environments of college hockey. So I like to cover college hockey as well, even though I'm a hoops guy. So appreciate it. All right, that'll do it from today's episode of Basketball in the Mountains. Like I said earlier at the top of the show, if you missed the previous episodes, we did Utah last week. We did Boise State yesterday. Appreciate Sean Walker from KSL coming on to preview this BYU season. You can go follow all of his work over at KSLSports.com. So appreciate everybody for listening. Make sure if you are listening on Apple or Spotify to subscribe to the channel. Leave a 5-star rating. All of that stuff is super appreciated by me. And if you're watching on YouTube, which I know a lot of people do, subscribe to the YouTube channel. leave a comment, like the video. All that stuff helps kind of spread, helps me grow it and grow the audience and all that kind of stuff as we get into this really exciting college basketball season. NBA is already underway. Going to be talking a lot about the Nuggets, Suns, Jazz as the weeks go along, but really focusing this week here on college basketball. And there's going to be plenty more episodes up on the field, like I said, just about every day. So stay tuned for everything that's next and enjoy the week of basketball.